Welcome, everyone, to the Rosie and Bill Show. From Blackfoot to Lynyrd Skynyrd to the band that bears his name, our guest this week has been making music, great music, for decades. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, singer, songwriter, and guitarist extraordinaire, Rickey Medlocke. Hey, Rickey, welcome to the show.
You're way too kind to me, Bill.
Just telling it like it is, my friend.
Well, it's good to be with you too. It's really a pleasure, Rosie, Bill. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
Well, it's certainly our pleasure, and we're grateful you're here. Rickey, before we turn the cameras on, you talked about how music has really always been a part of your life. So when did this journey start for you?
Well, believe it or not, I mean, a lot of people know this already. And I actually have pictures of a lot of the historic part of it. But my musical adventure began when I was only 3 years old. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was a professional musician that played 6, 7 different stringed instruments. He was just an incredible musician. And when I say incredible, I mean, I always thought that he had far more talent than I ever did. He picked it up naturally. He was raised in Georgia on a sharecropping farm. And him and his family were sharecroppers, along with an African-American family across the road. They shared every Sunday together, not only food, but music. And that was the environment that he grew up in, kind of like a Delta bluegrass, countryish type environment. Well, if you fast forward, he was playing with a lot of your old country music stars in and out of Nashville. And when he and his wife, wasn't my biological grandmother, him and my biological grandmother had actually got a divorce. And when after my mother had me, and he had remarried. And so he and his new wife, which was my grandparents, I counted that as that. And they legally adopted me when I was about 3 months old. Well, I grew up, in that environment. And I'll tell you, it was interesting because from the time that I could ever remember, I was always around music. He had bands, that used to come over and rehearse and play. He would go on the road. And when he would take my mom with him, they would take me, and I actually did sleep in a dresser drawer in hotels. They would make me a bed there. So that was the environment that I grew up in. And a lot of people say, well, you never got out of that. If you could sleep in a dresser drawer, I guess you would do it again. And I probably would. But what happened is that when I got to be about 3 years old, my grandfather bought me a miniature banjo, and he saw that I was interested in, music, playing instruments or whatever, because I'd pluck around on the strings. As he would tell it, I never frammed on the instrument and, tried to kill it, Well, he bought me a miniature banjo, brought it home, and he started teaching me how to play songs with him. And started teaching me all the basics, and nothing really what you say integral, but all the basics so that I could play with him. And actually, with a small voice actually sing with him. So he was on a local TV show when he would be home called The Toby Dowdy Show. And it originated out of Jacksonville on the CBS affiliate station, WMBR, which is now WJXT. Well, he went to the guy that, had the show, Toby, and he told Toby, he said, look, I'd like to bring my grandson on the show and have him play a song with me because I think it would be a great novelty. And Toby said, well, Shorty, how old is your grandson? And he said, well, he's 3 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And Toby was like, come on. Right? So Toby said, I got to see this. So he said, yeah, bring him on next week. I went on the following week, and the response was so great to me being on there for just one song that I ended up staying for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for 5 years I was on there till I was 8 years old. And in the midst of all that, I picked up playing guitar when I was 5.
Why'd you wait so long?
My granddaddy had a old Gibson J45. We still have it in the family. As a matter of fact, my better half, every time she picks the thing up and goes to playing it, she swears up and down she writes a new song every time. It's just got a real magic to it.
A lot of inspirational energy in that guitar.
Oh, big time. Big time. So I started playing then, and I never looked back.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world-class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs. Well, Rickey, when did you form your first band?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, I had started playing drums, pardon me, when I was 8. And we actually had a teen band that would, kind of a teen band that would play, sock hops and all that. Well, myself, along with the original drummer of Blackfoot, Jack, we started a band when we were about, I think I was 10 and he was 9. And it was called the Rockin' Aces. And we got somebody to paint 4 aces on the front of the drum head, and and we would play these, at the elementary schools, we'd play these sock hops. My granddaddy would take us to them. He would take us in the back of the car, load our instruments up and take us to them and drop us off, and we'd play, and then he'd come pick us up. And, but that was my earliest recollection of really having what you say, a band. You know what I mean? It was killer.
Well, it sounds like it was always like you said, always a part of your life. So in the 70s, then you were playing drums for a time and singing a little bit with Lynyrd Skynyrd. What was that experience like for you then?
Well, I was around the guys growing up, around Ronnie and actually Donnie and Johnny. But here's the cool thing about it. With my dad played a lot of your local dances at the time around town, around Jacksonville, the area. And Mr. and Mrs. Van Zandt would come out to his dances. So my parents knew, their parents. and they were friends.
Mm.
And so this is how I kind of got to know the Van Zants. And so I was around Ronnie and the guys in Lynyrd Skynyrd when we all played teen clubs in Jacksonville, different teen clubs, Good Shepherd, Lake Forest Inn, Woodstock Youth Center. I mean, it just goes on and on. And what was so cool is that the bands back then kind of formed a real solidarity. And we interchanged stuff together. If somebody needed strings, we did that. If somebody needed whatever, we did that, So when it came time, I was in Blackfoot already and living up in New Jersey. We had moved up there because a lady had come in to see us in a club in Gainesville, Florida. And it was a club called Dub Steer Room. And people like Tom Petty had played that room. And Skynyrd even played there at one point. And so we were kind of the house band there for a while. And a lady came in there during the Christmas time. And she said, I'm from such and such a record label. And I'd like to get you guys up to New York, and have you guys cut a demo and maybe possibly get a record deal. And we kind of went, boy, going all the way to New York, that's an awful long way, And none of us had ever been to New York City. I mean, we were greenhorns. And, but we did it. We picked up everything, lock, stock, and barrel, and we moved to New York City. And boy, when we got there, was that a just rude awakening. I'll never forget it. Stepping out onto the street, and we were at Broadway and a little bit past 42nd. And I stepped out onto the street and I went, wow, Rickey, you're not in Jacksonville anymore. And so from there, what ended up happening was a series of events took place. I mean, listen, if you could ever have anything happen to you, it was going to happen then. We were trying to get gigs. It wasn't happening. We got all of our equipment ripped off in the village. Reluctant. I mean, thank God the guy that was in the record label, he bought us new equipment, new guitars, all this stuff. And later on, here's what's really the cool thing. Later on, this guy named Ira Sokoloff, he ended up owning the merchandising company called Great Southern that did everybody's t-shirts and merchandise from the South. And so it was amazing. As a matter of fact, what's really interesting, I still have a couple of pieces of equipment that he bought for us back then, for me.
Wow.
And I don't know, man, he really saved us. So anyway, we were bumming around. We were trying our best, man, to get gigs. And we were scuffling. Finally, we were starting to play a few gigs here and there, but all of a sudden, our drummer ended up getting romantically involved with the manager, and things kind of went a little bit sideways with that. And I was just really unhappy. And I just happened to have, I expressed to my mom and dad that I was very unhappy with the way things were going. And my dad says, well, why don't you come on back home and try to get a band, together down here and get something going down here. And I mean, I thought it was a good idea, but little did I know. I happened to have Alan Collins' phone number. And I called Alan Collins. And I said, Alan, this is Rickey Medlocke. He says, hey, man, how are you? I says, well, I'm a little unhappy right now, man, with my situation. I explained it to him, you know. He said, man, I can understand that. He goes, well, let me ask you something. Do you still play drums? And I said, well, yeah, I do. You know, I said, I hadn't sat on a set of drums in a couple of years, but, you know, I still had chops and I still had myself together, you know, where I could play. So he goes, well, I need for you to call Ronnie. And I said, okay. So he gave me Ronnie's number. I called Ronnie. Ronnie answered the phone. And I said, Ronnie, I said, this is Rickey Medlocke. And he goes, hey, man, I haven't talked to you in a long time. He goes, how are you? I said, well, I said, I'm a little dissatisfied and unhappy with my situation. And Alan, I called Alan and I said, Alan had me call you. And he said, well, what can I do for you? I said, well, do you guys need like a roadie or, you know, somebody to set equipment up? He mentioned to me about something about drums. I can set up drums, drive a truck, whatever you need. He goes, you still play drums? You still play drums? I said, yeah. I said, yeah. He goes, well, we've lost our drummer. And he said, Bob Burns is ducked out of the band. And we're due in 2 weeks to be in Muscle Shoals cutting what will be our first record.
Wow.
And I went, sign me up. I'm in. I said, give me a chance to sell off some gear. I'll bring my guitars with me, but I'd like to do this. Well, later on in the story, I'll tell you, it's kind of reflectant of how I got back into Lynyrd Skynyrd. But they sent me an airline ticket. I flew down to Jacksonville. We went by my parents' house to drop my stuff off. Lo and behold, my old man is sitting on the porch playing his dobro on his lap. And Ronnie just was like, just thrilled with this. And we got out, and Ronnie, Gary, and Alan went up there and sat with my dad while I went in and got myself together. And I came out, and my dad said, Ronnie, you boys come back anytime. Ronnie goes, I'll be back. He goes, Shorty, I love that, you know. So from that moment, that was the first night we did rehearsals. And from that moment on, I was in Lynyrd Skynyrd for almost 3 years.
So, Rickey, I have to, I mean, there's so much history packed in there, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because as someone who's been a fan of yours and a fan of Skynyrd and a fan of Blackfoot, it's just great hearing so much of this. And I know a lot of it, but I know a lot of our viewers may not. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And one thing I have to say is I knew in that particular situation, the drums was kind of the opportunity for you at that time, but you ultimately came out from behind the kit and played guitar. So what led you to going from behind the kit to guitar?
Well, I had been a guitar player first, and in the formidable days of Blackfoot. And then I started playing drums for, LS. What happened was, and some people know this, others might not. I have a pretty serious respiratory illness called pulmonary fibrosis. And it affects, your air intake and, which would lead to your stamina, and stuff like that. Well, I was doing fine, but I knew in my heart, and it took a lot of honesty with myself and honesty with the guys. And I knew within myself that at some point, that once the band really took off and the pressure was on and to perform, every night for ever how long. And I knew that I would probably at some point run into problems. Mm-hmm. So I went to Ronnie and I explained to him, Ronnie, you guys are going to need somebody a lot more gifted than me. He goes, no, man. He goes, you play drums exactly what we want. He said, you're just like our Charlie Watts. He goes, you got that groove. You got that feel, that vibe. This is what we need, you know? And then I explained it even a little further and stuff like that. And he said, man, I understand. I get it. So back comes Bob Burns, fortunately. And of course, Bob was with him through the Pronounced record, the Second Helping record. And then he was out. Mm-hmm. But I left, and it was interesting. My old man told me, he said, now before you go and you quit, he said, there's something about that band, and especially that singer, Ronnie. Something about that guy, he said, he's going to do greatness. And if you duck out and you quit and you never make it in your life, you got to live with that.
Wow.
And I looked at my dad, and I think the way the conversation goes, I looked at him and I said, Pop, I have a feel in myself that no matter what, I'll get there. Mm-hmm. I said, this is all I ever wanted to do was do music. You and Ma knows it. You know, you knew that from day one. And I said, I won't be denied. I'm not going to be denied this. And he goes, okay. He said, if that's what you feel. And so, you know, Skynyrd came out in 73, and they, boom, exploded. And I watched it. And, you know, of course, I couldn't help but think, did I make the right decision? Or, you know, but I knew from my health that I had made the right decision. So here I am playing guitar and I'm singing. And even people even wondered how I was able to stand up and sing, knowing that, you know, what was going on with me. And so what was really cool is that I stayed right with it. And then unfortunately things happened the way they did in 77 with the band. And, you know, they had told me that the record that I cut with them in Muscle Shoals was, of all those early recordings, was going to come out at some point. Ronnie had fully intended to do that. And I had spent an evening with him and Judy, his widow, my ex-wife and I did, in 1976. You know, that Christmas before the disaster. And Ronnie and I had a really great conversation. And he had so much insight. And I often said that a guy that writes those lyrics the way he did, he was like an old soul. It's like he was, to me, an original Southern poet without getting the credit, you know? And I watched him. I would watch him so much when in rehearsals and playing live and traveling with him. And, you know, I am so thankful and blessed to have known the guy and able to sit here and talk to you guys about it. He was one of a kind, no doubt. And I feel very thankful that I was able to experience what I experienced around him and around him. After that, all of a sudden, we're got a new record out called Strikes. And they had put out that record, which is called Lynyrd Skynyrd's first and last album. And lo and behold, man, here I am I'm sitting on a Lynyrd Skynyrd record that's double platinum going toward triple. And the Strikes album has gone gold, headed toward platinum. And I'm thinking to myself, how ironic that was, the irony of it. And then I started thinking about where I started from back, wanting to do exactly that. And the irony of it, all of a sudden being right sandwiched in between two records that were just blowing wide open. And it's still, to me today, all of these different things that happen in my life just really blows me away, because it's almost like a roadmap that was set out to follow. And I followed it. And, you know, I'll never forget my grandfather. One time, he used to go out on the road with us in Blackfoot, and he would play train with us. He'd blow the harmonica and stuff, you know. And so he was at a gig with us. You know, he would travel with us and tour with us and stuff. And so he was after a gig one night. He saw how the audience reacted to us, and you know, he looked at me and he said, you know something, Rickey? He goes, I want to tell you something. He goes, after all that you've been through and you've experienced and you've done, and you know, and this was before I came back to Skynyrd, of course. He said, I want you to know, I think God gave you an extra special kiss when you came out of your mother's womb, because you've done some extraordinary stuff already, and you're just now getting into your early 30s. And he goes, it's going to be an incredible thing to see. Not sure I'll ever be here to see it, but it'll be incredible to see what you do from here on out, you know? And wow, that's been over 40 years ago. And I don't know, I got to tell you, you two guys, it's I've often thought about, and my significant other wants me to do it. I'm wanting to do an audio book of my voice, and you know, and make it a book of stories. And like I'm sitting here talking to you guys, you know, and I think that at some point I'm going to do it, because I could keep you guys here for 6 hours telling you stuff.
You should definitely do it, because you're a piece of music history, and people love to hear.
Yeah. And here's the really cool irony of this whole thing. Everybody always asks me, how did you get back into Skynyrd? And it's wow. I was in Blackfoot. I had my different version of Blackfoot, and the original band had broke up, and I was back playing, you know, really nice, either theaters or clubs or whatever, and didn't actually know which way I was going to turn and what I was going to do, and for the rest of my life. I knew I wanted to be involved in music. So I was hiring myself out to be the morning jock of different radio stations when the morning crews would go on vacation. I would go in and I would take over their morning show with the Rickey Medlocke's Wake 'em and Shake 'em morning show. I knew enough celebs and had their phone number where I was so rude that I would wake them up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and get their reaction for the people in the morning shows to be able to hear. And it was killer, you know. But I did it for about, I don't know, I was doing it consecutively for about a dozen radio stations around the country. And I would be on there 5 days a week while their morning crew took a vacation. So finally, out in Colorado Springs, I was doing it out there one week, and the general manager offered me a very lucrative position, job, to do the afternoon drive time at the major rock radio station out in Colorado Springs. Well,
Wow.
I had a decision to make. I said, you'll want to keep beating my head against the wall, trying to put records out that's not really going anywhere and, do anything, or some kind of, solidity of a job that, paid very well. And about that time, I get a phone call. This is so weird, man. About that time, I get a phone call from Ronnie's widow, Judy. Judy Van Zant called me and said, Rickey, it's Judy Van Zant. I would like to know if you would like to take part in our celebration at the Fox Theater for Freebird the movie premiere. And I said, wow, yeah, I would. She goes, there's an all-star jam the night before, and you're welcome to into that. So I agreed to do it. Pardon me. I canceled, I think, a half a dozen shows with my band. And I went up there and I got to see the guys. Oh my God, it was so incredible. The night of the jam, I got there and I'm walking into Fox Theater, and there's Gary and there's Johnny and there's Billy and Leon. And, I was just floored. Well, I went on stage that night and I sang I Ain't the One with Johnny. And then we played Train Train. Well, as I was walking off the stage, Charlie Daniels says to me, he says, Rickey, go back out and play one more. I went, huh? I said, we didn't work up anything else. He goes, no. Take a guitar or whatever and go back out there and just play a song. We got time for you to do that. Well, standing on the side of the stage was my manager, Charlie Brusco, their manager, Gary, Johnny, Billy, Leon. And I grabbed an acoustic guitar. I don't even know whose guitar it was. I grabbed this acoustic guitar and I walked back out. I put it on. And when I walked back out, the Fox Theater just stood up because we had played the Fox several times and had good sellout shows, and it was a good spot for us. And I walked back out, and those guys are standing over there looking. And I walked back out and I thanked everybody. And I said, Atlanta's always been really good to me. And I'm going to do this song right by myself with this acoustic. I hope you enjoy it. And I played Highway Song. And I played it. And what really occurred to me is that's the way it was written, on an acoustic guitar and just a vocal. And I played it. And when after I ended it, after I strummed the last chord, the whole place stood up, Well, Gary and we're standing there, and Gary's just looking at me, just like really looking at me. And I'm thanking everybody. And so their manager leaned over to my manager and said, Gary has been talking for years about getting Rickey back into the band.
Wow.
But the opportunity has never been right yet, the timing. And he said, I think the time is right now. So he said, I'll have Gary to get in touch with Rickey. And my manager said, fine, get a hold of us, let us know, Well, I was just really just high on the fact that there was a possibility I could get back with people that I enjoyed playing with and loved a lot. Well, January rolled around. I didn't hear from nobody. I heard from Gary once in February and didn't hear nothing else. So I was at my studio in Fort Myers. And, you know, you had the old phones that had the answering machine with the tape.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I called home to get my messages. And there was a voice on there that says, "Hey, Brother Rickey, it's Gary Rossington. I want you to learn I Ain't the One, Saturday Night, That Smell, and Freebird. The way Alan always played the songs, because you're as close to Alan as I could ever possibly get." He goes, "I'm going to come down to Fort Myers and I'm going to audition you. And if you pass the audition, I'll give you $1.50 in a Snickers bar and put you back in the band." I think to myself, $1.50 in a Snickers bar. Wow. Okay, I'll go for it. He came down. I knew, I mean, I set forth brushing up on the songs. I knew what Alan was playing. And I sort of knew exactly the licks and stuff. So I learned the 4 songs. And here comes Gary and his entourage down about a week later. They came to my condo there in Fort Myers. And I had my little amp set up with a CD player. And I got my Firebird, my reverse body Firebird, my old one, there. And he goes, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." And I had all the confidence that you could possibly shove in me. And we put on I Ain't the One. I played the rhythm. I played all the way through, played all the way through the lead, note for note. And right when we started to go into the last verse, he reached over and he hit the off button. And I went, uh-oh. He goes, "You want to do this?" And I went, "You better believe I want to do it." He goes, "Let's call Johnny." We called Johnny. Johnny gets on the phone. He goes, "Rickey, you've always been a front man, a lead singer. You sure you just want to stand there and play guitar?" I said, "Johnny, in the words of my granddaddy, you'll never get to be the driver of a Cadillac unless you can ride the back seat first." And I said, "I'm in the back seat."
Wow.
And that's been over 28, almost 29 years ago.
What a great story.
Wow.
So the irony of it all is to go from Blackfoot to being in Skynyrd, talking to Ronnie and them the first time, to all of a sudden being offered $1.50 in a Snickers bar, you know?
Wow. Yeah, and that
Did he
was
give you the
you
Snickers
never
bar?
know.
Did he give you the candy? That's what I want to
Well,
know.
here's oh yeah, I left out a great part. So I've been in the band back in the band about 10 years. One night we play a show, play one of the arenas or whatever. And we got up on the bus, and I always rode the bus with Gary and Johnny and Gary's wife, Dale. And we get up on the bus, and in the galley, I look over, and there's a Snickers bar with $1.50 wrapped up in it. And there's a note that said "paid in full." And I tell you, I loved Gary so much, man. He was such a gentleman, but he had the greatest, incredible sense of humor. And, we lost him here going on about 2 years now. And there ain't a day that goes by that I don't think about him and miss him. And it hit me really hard. When that whole thing went down and we lost him, it really hit me hard. So, and it's still kind of a raw spot in my system still today, you know?
Yeah, and then Ricky, that's totally understandable. And I know that was 96 when you got back in, right? I think it was 1996.
Yeah, it was well, it officially was March of 96.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, because since that time, before I ask my next question, I want to fast forward a little bit. I just wanted to comment that having seen you guys a couple of times live, and obviously I've got the Vicious Cycle CD and DVD and played that till it was worn out. Um, but I still remember it was 10 years ago, and I don't remember what they called it because an amphitheater in Jersey, right across the river from Philadelphia, it's been the
And
block.
Trenton,
It's down in Camden.
yeah, Camden.
Yeah, so it was the Blockbuster TD it might have
Yeah,
been Susquehanna back then.
I got you.
So it was 10 years ago. I still have the t-shirt. Paul Rogers' son opened up on acoustic guitar, the Dead
That's right.
Daisies, Bad Company, and you guys. It was on my ears rang for a week and I loved it. So, but anyway, it was just phenomenal. It really and truly was. I just wanted to share that because what I wanted to make sure I got to, Ricky, was, and I appreciate you sharing all those wonderful stories. And I know there's still a lot more, as you said, for the audio book that we look forward to. But I do want to fast forward to something a little more current, and
Yeah.
that is the single Rise Again, which is put out to support a very important organization, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. So I was wondering if you could share with our viewers a little bit about that organization and what inspired the song.
First of all, I'm over 2/3 Native, about 3/4. This, I call it an epidemic of great proportion. For decades and decades, it's gone on for, I would say, probably over almost 100 years that you have missing children, young women, young girls, teenagers, young women, older women, Native women that just up and disappear and vanish from the reservations. And they find them, sometimes they find them, deceased. They've been brutalized. And, and then all of a sudden you realize, you wonder to yourself, hey, what's going on here? And then when you find out that there's actually tens of thousands of them that have gone like this and they never get investigated properly. Anytime anything happens on a reservation, it's turned over to the federal government. The local law enforcement for the reservation can't do anything. It's got to go through the, through the federal government. Well, nothing ever happens. And so it's a bad situation. They did an episode. Well, I have a really good friend of mine. His name is Gil Birmingham, and he plays in the TV series Yellowstone. He is the tribal chairman. And there he's in the new, the new episodes right now. And when I was doing this song back at the beginning of the year called Never Run Out of Road, we doing it through a label called Rock the Cause. And Rock the Cause, you agreed with them to donate part of the proceeds to your own choice of charitable organizations. So I called up Gil and I said, Gil, what would be a great organization to donate, for the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement? He said, hang on. He said, let me call Taylor Sheridan and I'll find out. who he donates to. He called Taylor. Taylor told him the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. They are very outspoken on this. They have a lot to do with this. Now, going back, Gil was involved in a film that dealt with this called Wind River that had Jeremy Renner in it. As a matter of fact, Gil was the father in the film of a missing daughter. And then they did an episode, I think, season 3, to where the son of John Dutton, the one son, not Jamie, but the other one, his wife gets abducted.
Mm.
But they were able to rescue her because of Gil and his sidekick Mo. And it dealt with that. So my decision was, let's do this song, donate the proceeds of downloads, merchandise, whatever, to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. And I've done the same thing with Rise Again. It's very special to me. It holds a very special place, pardon me, in my heart. And you know what? I'm so into bringing forth attention to this because, like I said, it's an epidemic of major proportions. Yeah. And everybody should take a look at it. This hat that I'm wearing, that's a hat that signifies the red hand, which is the symbol for missing and murdered Indigenous women.
I want to thank you for raising awareness because, again, I did do some homework into that organization once I realized where the proceeds were going for Rise Again. I also appreciate your efforts over the years through the gift of your music to bring people together, because one thing I'll say just to kind of close out my thoughts is that every time I've seen you play live, no matter where those people came from that day, for however long you guys were on the stage, no one sat down. Everybody was high-fiving, hugging, and just having a great time. And it was Skynyrd Nation, everybody coming together in that situation. Same thing at a Blackfoot show. And I know the same thing is going to happen at a Rickey Medlocke Band show. To bring people together. And I thank you for that.
You know what, Bill? I love people. I love listening to their walk of life. There's not anybody that I won't stop and talk to. My better half usually says, "Come on, baby, we got to go now. We got to go." You know? But I love talking to people. I love hearing what walk of life that they're in. You know, I feel very blessed and fortunate that I've been able to do what I do and stay in the music business and be able to talk to wonderful people like yourselves. And you know what? I'm going to stay here until, you know, one day I get called upwards, you know, and I got to get off the bus, you know. And then once I get off the bus, well, y'all can talk about me any way you want to.
Well, and you'll continue the music up there as well. I have no doubt.
Oh, I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Well, Rickey, my goodness, this has been just an incredible experience for us to get to know you. And yes, that's an amazing cause. And I'm glad to hear that it's so a passion for you because it's very important. And thanks for sharing your music. Folks, they have a concert in Jim Thorpe, PA. Rickey's going to be playing in Jim Thorpe, PA in January. That's, you know, coming up soon. So check it out. And Rickey, we wish you all the best. Keep the music alive. And thanks for coming on the show.
You betcha. And Rosie, you and Bill, I want you to have an incredible Christmas and a bang up New Year. I do.
Oh, thank you so much. And
right back at you.
Goes to you and your significant other.
You got it. My love to y'all. You take care.
You too. And folks, thank you as always for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.
Right.
This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty & Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exeter, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.